As always, your appointment viewing here on Prime Time in this channel, which we've been doing now for more than 6 months in partnership with Business World. The effort has been very clear. It requires not much for a country that is the biggest market in the world, that has the best brain power in the world, that is capable of so many things and has gone through so many things as well, to sometimes just start appreciating what we've got, because we spend way too much time fighting over this and that. And while that's a part of the rough and tumble, there's only one thing that we can be certain about. For us to realize our hopes and aspirations and our dreams, it's going to require creating a different country in a short span of time. And for that, we need people who are entrepreneurs, people who have great ideas, to get our respect and attention. This is what this broadcast has been about. Let us take a small indulgence and introduce everybody on the panel this evening. Santosh Kumar is Vice Chairman of Anarch Property Consultants Private Limited. Piyush Gupta, Managing Director of Capital Markets and Investment Services at Colliers International. Ambar Maheshwari is Chief Executive Officer at India Bulls Asset Management. Nand Gopal Khaitan, he is out of Kolkata, a partner of dispute resolution and real estate at Khaitan and Company. And as always, Dr. Anurag Batra, Chairman and Editor-in-Chief of Business World, is with us on the telecast. Anurag ji, if you could set up this evening's conversation, please.
Thank you so much, Rishabh. Thank you for partnering with Business World to do this and making a part of your daily routine and the viewers' daily routine. Today we have a star-studded panel of real estate stalwarts and practitioners from the real estate sector. And we're going to ask them about, have their expectations been met from the budget? How do they see the budget sector? And if the real estate sector needs to be brought back to its full glory of maybe 8 years back, 9 years back, and last 3 months, the sector is started to do better than before. There has been a reset in the sector. So let me start by asking each of the panelists on what are their comments on the budget. Are they satisfied with what they see in the budget? What could have been better? What they think will work for kickstarting the economy? Let me first get in Santosh Kumar, who's the Vice Chairman of Anarch, to give his comment on how does he see the budget for the sector.
Thanks, Anurag. Budget after the COVID, it was imperative that the government would have focused on national building, and rightly, I think the finance minister has done that, focusing more on infrastructure. But I think if we really need to reach the Prime Minister's goal of $5 trillion economy, I think these are very much required. Some of the steps which the finance minister has taken, that is very much appreciated. I think from a real estate perspective, the focus was on affordable housing. It was expected that the finance minister will focus more on affordable housing, and she has extended the incentive which was there for 1 more years. And also the budget focused much more on infrastructure, creating more investment on the infrastructure side. We do believe that it is going to benefit real estate in the long term. But in order to answer your question on whether the finance minister has met the expectations of the real estate industry, a little difficult, but there have been from the industry, especially on
specifically, yeah. I want to ask you specifically what?
Specifically on the residential side of the business, Anurag, we would have expected the much more exemption on the interest and the principal amount was made on 2014. Post that, there was not much I've done in order to create demand for the housing projects. We would have also expected, to announce in order to meet this part on the retail investment, on the retail participation on the REITs. We thought she will announce some exemption for maybe another 50,000 rupees for the REITs. Reduction on stamp duties, like what the Maharashtra government did in order to boost the revenue. If the central government would have taken the step, even though the stamp duty is a state subject, but if they have instructed the state government to reduce the stamp duty, it would have been much more appreciated. And also, I think the industry was expecting some cuts on the GST as well. It's really high at this moment. The industry would have expected. So these were the expectations from the industry. Maybe other panelists would like to share some other expectations as well.
Okay, let me bring in Mr. Ketan. Mr. Ketan, your commentary on what you saw on the budget.
The debates have gone into the budget, what budget is all about. A lot of seminars have taken place. But let me tell you what the budget is all about. I will give you two statements made by Vivek Debroy, who is the economic advisor to the Prime Minister. What is the thrust of this budget? Mr. Vivek Debroy made a statement immediately after the budget, which is very interesting. And he goes on to say that this budget was not to teach a man how to fish. Again, I'll repeat, this budget was not to teach a man how to fish, instead of offering him a fish. So that was the thrust of the budget, that you are teaching a person how to fish but not to offer him a fish. And the finance secretary went to the extent to say that the budget are not for tinkering with the taxes. Stability brings investors confidence. The mentality that higher collection need higher tax or to go after a large number of taxpayers is a myth. So this has the thrust of this budget. You will find that there has not been any tinkering on the rate of taxation, any tinkering on the rate of taxation, save and except as far as the real estate is concerned, as my learned friend Mr. Santosh Kumar said, that they have touched on the point of affordable housing. But one which the budget provided for was a affordable rental housing. I mean, they have not come out with the scheme or the notification, but what would be the rental affordable housing would be an important point and would be an important factor to give a boost to the housing sector. I think this was one important announcement on an affordable rental housing.
Okay, let me bring in Amber and get Amber's point of view before we bring in Piyush. Amber, you heard Santosh, you heard Mr. Ketan. We'd love your comments.
By and large, I'm very happy with the budget. I agree with Santosh and Mr. Khaitan that a whole lot more could be done. But I think this government's agenda became very clear in 2014 when they took away those taxes and so forth. And I don't think they are coming back. The tax exemptions and so forth. All of that is history. For every single sector has asked for a cut in GST, has not happened. I forward into the future as well. By and large, I think what we really need now is a positive sentiment, which I think this government has done with the budget that they have announced. We need positive GDP growth. We need GDP growth to go and sustain itself into double digits going forward as well. We are in a negative real interest rate scenario, back where we used to be in 2005, 2006. Right? I actually believe that if the sentiment becomes positive, we are going to see a similar growth that we see way back in 2005, 6, 7, 8. We are going to see in the coming 5 years. The developers have reduced prices on pandemic because they became unreasonable to a large extent. The interest rates are at an all-time low. Mortgages are at 6.7% today. Residential sector is set to boom, in my opinion, over the next 4 to 6 years if the sentiment turns positive very, very quickly.
Okay. I think one of the things is that when you set expectations low, whatever you get to satisfy you, in some way the case with this budget is that. And you're right. If you look at the last 6 budgets, they were a social impact budget. They were for the middle belly of the population. They were for the bottom of the pyramid. The focus has been affordable housing and rate cuts, especially the GST rate cuts that have been expected by various sectors. In some cases irrational, and in some cases because they make it uncompetitive, have still not back,
Yes.
and so we shouldn't expect. Piyush, your word before we go into the second leg of the discussion.
I think the key.
What is your commentary in terms of how it will jumpstart the real estate economy, and by that definition, the real estate sector has a kind of trickle down impact on various other sectors of the economy. So we'd love to.
Yeah, Anurag, see, I think the budget clearly proposes a significant outlays in the areas of infrastructure, maybe physical, medical, a lot of spend on highways, ports, railways, which basically will definitely increase the economic activity and growth. And ultimately, it boils down that there is expenditure happening either from the government side or the private side. The spending is more led by monetization of assets, some disinvestment, and some government borrowings, and not by the increase of taxation rates. So that's I think a big positive boost. People will have more disposable income in their hands, to buy houses. Second is I think government clearly keep the interest rates low, and even if we hear the last RBI policy statement a couple of days back, they are cognizant of the fact that interest rates may increase. But I think for next 12 to 18 months time, it's paramount that government keeps the interest rates at the reasonable levels, so that whether the corporates borrowing and expanding, or if it trickles down to the retail side, also spells out in that way. I think another important aspect is the dispute resolution. I think in last 2 years' time, we have seen a lot of stress which has happened on the residential side, and also a lot of on the NBFC side. There has been emphasis to keep the resolution on a very fast track, and we have seen that clearly where government has acted upon, whether it's a solution of Yes Bank or Diwan Housing Finance, which is possibly now going in the possible suitors' hands. So I think the government has taken action from all the sides, and possibly we are definitely moving more towards a double-digit growth in next 2 to 3 years' time.
Okay, looks like a unanimous thumbs up to the budget, Rishabh. The finance minister ended up in some way in a very good spot where almost all sectors of the industry have, and not only lauded the budget on camera, but off the camera, and there was a policy consistency, no inheritance tax, no COVID cess, so those two measures were looming large over the budget, and they didn't happen. Let me ask, now the residential sector seems to be seeing some revival. I would want some commentary from each one of you on that. Housing sales in Bangalore in the last 3 months is shown promise. Also, the percentage of payments for the house for it to qualify as a sale has also changed. These days, you're almost getting 100% payments, unlike when investors would book pay part payment, and the full payment would never come, and the sale never happened. So it was counted as a sale. So I would want a commentary of real estate are seeing an uptrend. Why? For example, the warehousing sector is seeing a huge because of the e-commerce, picking up. So I would like to hear from each one of you, and let me start with Piyush this time. Piyush, where is the real estate sector headed? What are the sub-sectors in the real estate industry that are seeing a revival, and who seems to do the best?
Anurag, as you rightly pointed out, residential has seen definitely a lot of green shoots in last 6 months. The demand to own a house has become even stronger. The demand to own a bigger house also has got stronger. What has happened in last 12 to 24 months time is there's a clear separation of well-prudent developers with the marginal and poorly managed developers. So which is also increasing confidence in the minds of final buyers. So residential, and Amber mentioned this point, I think so maybe for next 2 years time, we might possibly see a stable price But after 2 years' time, possibly because of consolidation, the supply will get constricted, and you will see definitely a much uptick coming on the residential side. Office side, there's definitely I think, huge demand for investors to invest in the income-generating assets in India. We have seen a couple of large transactions happen. We have seen two REITs, during the COVID times, raising, billions of dollars. The appetite for investors to invest in India is growing. Whether it's office or we talk about warehousing, industrial, we have seen the entire India's resilience and industries moving from China or elsewhere to India. Now we are seeing that happening on ground. Even within warehousing or industrial, we see data centers because of the spurt of demand of data and growth in e-commerce activity. We have seen huge investment happening on data center by Indian conglomerates, by international operators. So clearly the industrial, whether it's warehousing, e-commerce, or the hardcore industrial activity like data centers, are definitely likely to see more and more capital coming in, and not only capital, also end users, occupiers, also moving a lot of investment base to India.
Hey, Amber, your commentary on where the revival within the real estate sector is happening, and why is it happening, and will the trend continue to kind of manifest it in a bigger way?
Well, certainly, Anurag. Residential is one of the key where revival is coming up, and it has become visible over the last 3 to 6 months. If we sustain this for another couple of months, couple of quarters, which I don't have any doubt on, because of the positive sentiment that not only this budget has created, but also the general, the vaccines have come about, the pandemic is towards an end. The cases in India are at an all-time low and lowest, among the lowest in the world and so forth. So things are returning back to normalcy. Residential certainly is one of the key sectors. Just a little bit more on that. I think we're seeing two trends on the residential bit. One is the separation from the good, separation between the good from the bad. The industry is consolidating towards credible brands. And second, most people are buying either completed inventory or close to completion inventory. And this links to one of the jokes that we used to have in the industry at one point in time, where we used to say that, look, every other industry sells a product, whereas a real estate developer only sells a promise. And now, with consumers moving towards close to completed apartments, I think that is making this a far more robust industry, which will have different kinds of financing in place, which will have different credible players in this. The capital structuring will be very, very different going forward and so forth. So one, I think residential certainly is on the upswing. There may be, some volatility over the course of next 6 to 9 months, but from a longer term trend, residential is one of the key sectors that is set for recovery. I strongly believe that interest rates will remain low because of the excess liquidity in the system, and this government or any government in the world today cannot take that liquidity away because of what we've seen all the industries go through the pandemic. Second, industrial for sure, of supply chain rejig that is happening at a global level. Within India, of course, the pandemic did accelerate a whole lot of things towards e-commerce and towards, creating a more efficient supply chain, but also from a global supply chain perspective, where people are moving from, looking to move away from China and creating alternative locations and geographies. I think India will benefit out of that. This decade will be a manufacturing decade for India, which will necessitate a lot of supply chain rejigging that will happen, which will lead to a bright future for industrial. Commercial continues the way it was. While we've seen a bit of a dip on the fresh leasing side last year, but given the consensus that is emerging, and all of us can't just wait to get back to office, that is
Absolutely.
something which so office will continue to remain. I think data centers are not very bullish on scale perspective. I think data centers, you don't need it's not a real estate sector. B, you don't need that much of scale as rush towards setting up data centers. I think it's a You know,
what will happen is, Amber, in that in the data center space, the government's push to localize data for data to reside in India will, and as that push grows, data grow, so that scale will matter, and scale will matter in a big way, because if you look at Amazon or if you look at Google, they have large cloud and data center businesses which are really powering the world. Now, in some way, as our country's data needs grow, Indian players will also want a slice of that pie, especially with the regulation in some way ensuring that they have a go at it. Mr. Ketan, real estate sector, at least a lot of people said, Modi government doesn't worry about real estate sector. It worries about the stock markets more. And clearly with the stock markets doing as well they are doing, that comment couldn't have been more true. So do you see the real estate sector really blossoming from here on?
You see, as you rightly said, that your market capitalization is equal to the GDP of the country. I mean, that's the stock market today. But let me tell you something which I strongly feel and believe in, that the growth of the country, if you want to see golden India, the real estate sector has to grow. The economy can grow on two particular industries. One is the automobile industry and one is the real estate industry. Because these particular industry percolates down the line, and lot of manufacturing, lot of service sector is dependent upon the growth of either automobile industry or the real estate industry. Now, the forecast is today that by 2030, the Indian real estate sector would contribute, GDP will contribute $1 trillion. That's the forecast today. And the forecast also is that your 25, the real estate would contribute of the GDP of the country. They are the second largest employer in the country, apart from the agriculture. So therefore, the question here is, if the government wants the economy to revive, the government wants the country to prosper, they have to give importance to the real estate sector. I do agree. I mean, as I said, I read the statement of the finance secretary, I read the statement of the economic advisor of the prime minister. They said that we want a stability in taxation. We don't want any tinkering in taxation. But what we basically, if you read the economic survey of the country, the economic survey went to the extent to say that we are an over-regulated country. Nothing to do with part of it. What I am talking of regulation. And the economic
regulation also means the cost of compliance. There is a cost of compliance.
And the economic survey went to the extent of the rating that we are ranked 74 out of 128 countries in the world as far as overall ranking is concerned, and as far as the other rankings are concerned, like the quality of regulations, we are ranked 104. As far as improper influence used in regulation is 107. So therefore, we are totally an over-regulated country. So therefore, what we really need in this real estate sector to grow is a single point clearance. 2, consolidation of regulation, reduction of and periodicity of regulation. If these 4 factors are taken into consideration without giving any relief on part of the taxation, I think this will give a great boost to the real estate sector. Because as we know that, our because of this pandemic, we are in a great financial stress. So at this point of time, or even the next year, if we expect that the government to tinker the taxation or would lower the taxation, there is no chance of it. So what we really need is that instead of overall regulation, and if we go on for a single point clearance, consolidation of regulation, reduction of compliance, and periodicity of renewal, this will give really great boost to the real estate sector.
So let me rope in Santosh ji back into this conversation. Santosh ji, what do we do next? What is here onwards required? Because there are many challenges coming our way. We don't know once March comes. There is an X factor on the Indo-Tibet border where mobilization has been tense, as you well know. We have a new American president. but there is stability for now. How can we utilize that part as we speak, sir? Santoshji, what do we do next? What's left to be done?
Yeah, I think on the residential side, it's because we are more into residential. I think very important to encourage the demand. Creating demand is very, very critical at this moment. And in order to create demand, I think government should do everything possible. This sector has been getting impacted over a long period of time. If you've seen last 7-8 years, this sector was for various reasons, and the government has on their own tried to bring in a lot of regulations, a lot of cleanup has been done with the bringing of RERA and also with the GST coming in. But I think there is more has to be done in order to clean up this sector. Like Piyush mentioned, the distinction between the good and the this sector is going to see a lot of consolidation with more and more corporates are going to play a big role in development. So in order to create the demand, I think everything possible, giving a lot of incentives to this sector and have been from industry, and also recognizing this industry as an industry. This sector as an industry is also very, very important.
Okay, I think that's been repeated by several people, including those in hospitality, even in fashion, that why are we reticent from recognizing that there are new kinds of industrial sectors out there which represent a new reality of where the world is. Let me get Mr. Gupta back in on this conversation. Mr. Gupta, on the assumption that we are still capable of doing more things and that this is not the be all and end all, what next, sir? What can be done in the coming weeks and months? I don't know if Mr. Gupta is able to hear my voice.
Sorry. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was for you, sir.
Yeah. No, I think the stable policy regime, I think it's the most critical aspect. We have seen that on the taxation side. But there are a few things, which definitely could be addressed. I think the sector has been battling with this problem and more so for the last 2.5 years time for the crisis. So government launched this, special window for middle and affordable housing, which has been a great success. I think something like that window should continue. So we have to realize we still have more than $25 billion of capital invested by the NBFCs who are no more investing. In fact, they're withdrawing capital. And this is spread across, tens of cities or about thousands of projects. So this windows, should keep coming. The liquidity should keep flowing. The number two, I think, aspect is today for a real estate product, I think the more than 40% of the cost of the product actually goes for government premiums, either in form of taxation or, premium. I think this something has to be recalibrated. We saw some by Maharashtra government announcing reduction in premiums. We have stamp duty waivers, but this possibly has to, on a pan-India basis, will remain a challenge because we have a federal system, state government, central government. But this is something which possibly each of the government in each respective state should definitely keep a very strong view on. Third, also is the stamp duty. I think while we are more moving towards a unified, indirect taxation regime,
correct,
with very few products outside the GST ambit. The stamp duty should ideally get subsumed. In fact, this was also one of the, I think, major demand the real estate industry, which has not happened. But hopefully, looking at various consideration, we will see that government will act upon it, and we will see.
So that's a pretty specific list, and I am repeatedly told by those in government off camera that there still exists the potential of something called a reform stimulus. That through reform, injection can be done into this economy, and we still have to believe that is a real thing. Amberji, what next? What's next on your checklist? I know everything's not going to be ideal, but we have to keep on rolling this country forward.
No, so look, I will talk from a more macro perspective. I
Please,
think both
please.
Piyush and Santosh have talked about micro, what you could do from a bottom up sort of an approach. But from a top down approach, I think real estate is a horizontal sector. It grows on the back of sector, right? It's if the GDP grows, real estate will grow. If new jobs, new employment is created, real estate will grow both on the office front as well as on the resi front and the warehousing front and so forth, right? If new industries come by, look, we've had a tremendous growth in IT sector. For the last 20 odd years, the number of people that it has employed and has created disposable income for all of those people. And therefore, those people have gone and bought houses and have been housed in offices and so forth. We need new sectors like IT. We need, maybe healthcare is one such sector where, big data has to come about in healthcare, artificial intelligence, machine learning. These are the industries that have to come about and employ a whole lot more people. We need we need more geographies. We've only been talking about top 6 cities for the last 20 years, right? We need new geography. We need a Jaipur to come about. We need a Vishakhapatnam to come about. We need an Aurangabad to come about, where you could create new jobs, where you could house new people so that, the real estate growth comes. Just a parallel, if you look at telecom, for instance, once the urban area growth sort of achieved parity, all the telecom operators went to rural and sub-rural and suburban sort of areas to achieve growth. I think we need to look at that as well from an industry perspective. We need to identify new areas of growth, new geographies where this growth can come about. So more from a macro perspective rather than a micro, a whole lot to be done, but all going in the right direction.
Okay. And if I can put the same thought to Mr. Khaitan, there is a I keep saying on this that the reason we are dedicating so much time, not from just having silly arguments after what this, media industry seems to have become, is because we have to have belief in Team India. Now, what can Team India do? How do we get government out of the way to let Team India get on with it?
As I said, a lot of people now, they said that, there should be a reduction on the stamp duty, which is, if you ask for these reductions of stamp duty, if you ask for this is not a solution where we can have a development of real estate. I mean, what is going to happen? If you go anywhere, any other country in the world, the real estate will grow on 3 factors. One is the metro, another is the railway, and the third is the road. Now, if you have a large metro network, if you have good roads to connect you to away from the metro city, and if you have a good railway network, this will give the boost to the real estate sector. Because today what has happened in urban sector, you are clogged. There are very few lands available. The prices of the lands are very high. So therefore you have to grow and go away from the urban sector. And what will happen? This budget has really focused on metro. This budget has really focused on railway. This budget has really focused on road. Now, all the metros, you will now see that all the metros all the urban cities, large cities are now having metros. Now, this will give a boost to the real estate sector. Now, your out of entire housing sector, the residential housing sector, 65 to the 70% of the housing sector is in relation to affordable housing. This is where the growth will come in. And this is where, will happen when we move out away from the city where we can have cheaper land. But what we need is one very, very important factor, which I said deregulation, is also liberalizing land. Until you don't liberalize land, there will be a difficulty in having land outside the urban area, because the moment you get out of the city, you will only find agricultural land.
Mr. Khaitan, so what do you mean by liberalize? Because we've talked about land reform. I remember interviewing Nitin Gadkari not a long time ago, and that Mumbai-Delhi corridor, and I asked him this specific question that how have we got around land acquisition? And he said we are simply offering better than the market price. That takes away 90% of the problems, because if people are getting a good deal, that helps. So that's capital forces applying. So how do you liberalize land, so then?
You see, the liberalized land will be like you have a bar on sale of agricultural land. Now, therefore, a lot of state there is, because the moment you move out the city, it's all agricultural land. So therefore, if you allow this will give money to the farmers. After all, if they get 4 times of the value of the land, 5 times of the value of the land, if it is being used, converted from agriculture to non-agriculture purpose, the money will come in the hands of the farmer. So they will become also rich. They will also, because after all, it is the consumption which is going to give a boost to the economy. So I personally feel that if there is a deregulation as far as the land laws are concerned, we don't want any tax concession, because we cannot think of any tax concession, because we are in a dire state. Our economy is in a dire state. The government needs funds to invest in the infrastructure sector. What we need is not funds. What we need is a liberalization. As I said, single window clearance, liberalization of deregulation of land laws. If these things are done, it's what is the thrust of the budget? What is a good country is that you should have an ease of living, and your citizens should have. Now, without housing, you cannot have a good health.
Okay.
Housing is very important for a good health. The thrust of this budget is health, and the well-being will only come provided you have a shelter to live. So therefore, my personal feeling is that this should be the motto of the government, that we must provide good housing. They say that housing for all. Today we have around about 24 crores houses in the country, round about 24 to 25 housing units. Our population is 1.30 billion. We have still not reached the place where in other parts of the world So
yeah, the density is different. But I'm being told that the PM Awas Yojana, which is scheduled to construct 73 lakh houses and now 1.1 crore houses, is being completed on time, despite the fact that last year has not been the most pleasant of years. Before I hand back to Anurag ji, Santosh ji, this is a public telecast. There are lots of conferences in which we have internal conversations. Here is an address to the people of this country, sir, who are watching. The biggest pain point that I feel is that for all the success that we do here, we still feel in this country that is only recognizable if somebody sitting in New York says so, or somebody sitting in London says so, or I have to go to San Francisco to be successful to actually matter. How do we get past this? I'm not being able to break this paradigm, sir. Santosh ji, help us out.
It's a very interesting question. I also don't have the answer, but if the country has to be made, I think that will be made by Indians. Nobody sitting out of New York will be able to build the nation. But having said that, the assistance from the overseas investors are also very, very for the nation building. And it is very important that the government send a clear message or a confidence to the international investors to invest in India, and especially in the real estate sector. That is very critical for the growth of this industry, and also for generating employment in the industry. Like Amber mentioned, the sectors where demand for
because I'm glad you're saying this, because there's another aspect to this conversation, and Amber Maheshwari, is that if the best of us, I come from a school I was mentioning the other day, half my batch settled abroad. Half. So 1 in 2 of the people who had the best possible education you could get in this country settled abroad. Better opportunity, I don't know what it was. Some of them are now coming back incidentally. But Amber Maheshwari, when we talk about quality of life and the aspiration of quality of life, which used to be Canada and the UK or Singapore, what is quality of life? What does that mean to us now in a country in which we are still trying to get water and makan made?
Yeah, no, look, I think, all of us on this panel sitting insulated in our houses with, the help that we have and all the big cars and all of it, it's very easy to talk about quality of life. But if you look at the per capita of this country. I think, I'm absolutely with the government on this. We cannot talk about quality of life for an average citizen unless from the overall statistical perspective. I mean, how can we talk about quality of life when there are people dying of malnutrition in a country, where security and safety is a problem? Where the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan that came about was to install toilets. Quality of life is like 53rd on the agenda right now, where we need to first get to a level where per capita income is sufficient for people to move on from where they are to a situation where on at least
so is there so that's traditionally defined as welfareism. Mr. Khaitan, is there an economic argument that we can find that such kind of welfareism? I'll give you a small example. You put a tap in a house, so the woman of the house doesn't have to walk 10 kilometers to get water every day. Shouldn't this have obvious economic advantages in the near future as well?
The point here is that, as you said, our thrust should be ease of living also. I mean, the quality of living and the ease of living is very important. As in this budget, you have seen a lot of importance has been given on the water front also. The point in issue is that, the country, we are 130 billion, our population is 130 crores. We are a democratic country. It's not China where you can do whatever you want, It's a democratic country, you pass this farmer law and you say what has happened, The entire country has been had come to a standstill. We are a democratic country after all. But I think we are now moving in. What was our GDP when we became pre-independence? Our rate of growth was 0.9%. That was our rate of growth. Now today we are the fastest growing economy in the world.
Yeah, but there was also a time before that when we were, 18 or 19% of the world's GDP, just this country. Okay, so I've got about 10 minutes left. Let me toss back to Anurag ji to take his last round of questions. Anurag ji, back to you.
I think they're right. What I like about what Amber says is that the real estate sector cannot be seen in isolation. The sector has to have demand for money to be put into the sector, and hence the budget has to be seen in its holisticness. And also the Prime Minister's statement before the budget and the commentary on the budget, that budget has to be seen in the context of interventions by the Finance Ministry and the RBI over the last 10 months. So in that sense, the budget seems to have been received favorably. What it depends on is now the execution, which I'm sure will happen. What I want to ask the panelists is, if I were to talk to you 6 months, if me and Rishabh were to talk to you 6 months from now, what would you like to see happen in real estate, or in your assessment, if I may call one prediction for the future? Let me start with you, Santosh, and then go around the house.
Yeah, Anurag, if I would like to see the real estate in next decade also, I would like real estate to be robust, transparent, accountable, and very efficient. That's aspiration. And I would like to see many corporates, corporates becoming developing arm, and they're contributing more on this journey. And also use of technology on the real estate sector is also key. I think in order to become efficient, I think technology is critical.
Okay, gentlemen, I think we're just losing that audio connection with you over there. So while I wait for that connection to quickly randomly stabilize, Anurag, sorry, we just lost you for a few seconds. Please carry on. Anurag, can you hear us?
Yes.
Yeah.
So from a prediction perspective, I think, look, just like the last decade was about where commercial real estate did whatever that it did, hasn't been better in this country. And last decade, this decade will belong to residential. We've had people have been talking about pent-up demand during the pandemic time frame. I'm saying we've had a pent-up demand for 10 years, and that pent-up demand in a low interest rate, high GDP growth, high employment generating environment is only set to boom in a way that like we've never seen before. So this decade will be residential decade, squarely.
Piyush?
I think over and above residential, I think the industrial and the manufacturing be what we have never seen in last 7 decades. I think starting with Make in India 1.0, then that laid the foundation, and with the now Make in India 2.0 is definitely going to hasten the entire manufacturing transition. What we are seeing on a political side with business moving from China, I think this is a great and a huge opportunity, and we have already started to see that there's parts of India. So I would say next 10 years, is for India. I think we're going to take a significant leap on the manufacturing side.
Okay. Last but not the least, Mr. Khaitan, your final view.
I don't know whether we have all heard of Ruchir Sharma or not. He came out with a prediction very lately that 2020-2030, the decade will belong to Asia, belong to USA and BRIC countries. He came out with a clear statement that it will belong to USA and BRIC countries, which will include China and India, of course. And as it goes that we will become the second largest. We will overtake USA and China, and purchasing power parity will become the largest economy in the world in the next 20 years. But the issue is that economic survey also went to the extent to say that growth is the mantra to remove poverty. And it went to the extent to say 81% of the poverty by growth, and only 17% or 18-19% of the poverty can be removed by inequality. So therefore, what has been happening in this country was that we were going on the path of equals should be all equals. Instead of the policy has been towards that higher impose super rich tax, impose higher rate of tax. At one point of time, we had a rate of taxation of 93%, and if you add Wealth Tax Act, probably you had to sell your assets to pay the tax. I remember when I joined this profession, if I had wealth, then I had to sell my assets to pay income tax. That was the situation. And gradually it started reducing, and today our rate of taxation has become one of the lowest in the world. We have gone to the extent of 15%. So what we are now striving at is basically growth. And we are not willing that, equal should be made unequal, or unequal should be made equal. So therefore the thrust has been growth. And if we want to remove poverty, as you rightly said, provide houses to all, provide good drinking water to all, provide sanitation to all, this will only come provided there is a growth, and the growth will only also a growth of the real estate sector.
Fantastic. Back to you, Rishabh.
Okay, gentlemen, pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. As always, it's been an engaging conversation, and I'm going to recommend all the people watching this broadcast. These are the people that you're seeing on your screens. This is Team India. We're all in the boat together. I have a forum here which is ably partnered with the entire team that Anurag ji runs, who operates his own very, very reputable, not one but several forums. Some of you might, of course, have heard of Business World, but he also runs Exchange for Media. He sits on various advisory boards of companies and universities. And we all come together, we can get this done. Because if we make the size of the pie a lot larger, then we can do good by this country. And that's what it should be. Do good by this country and to be good by its people.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.